Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on bogradio.fm. Good morning to you. We've got a very special guest on our show today. We also want to give a shout out to RadioQDX.com out of Lucama, North Carolina, and KCHF-TV out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've got a very special guest on the show this morning, a friend to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. She is a versatile and talented comedian who can cater to a wide range of events and audiences. Very important as a comedian. Her ability to blend professionalism, humor, and relatability makes her a must-see performer. You can see her in her new, or fairly new, Drybar Comedy special called The Wizard of Walmart. With no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show the very funny and the very talented Rhonda Corey. What's up, Rhonda? How are you?
Hey, Maurice, how are you?
I am doing great. It is awesome to have you back on the show. It's been a minute. I had an opportunity to interview you during the COVID-19 when we were all depressed as comedians and we didn't have a darn thing to do. And I created this podcast platform as a result of it. Then I had a chance to be on your show, your online show, which you are no longer doing because you're just too dadgum busy performing all over the place. And one of those things you've got going right now is the Funny Together Tour. Tell us about that.
The Funny Together Tour. Okay, I am so excited about the Funny Together Tour, Maurice. What it is, it's a group of comedians that I've assembled. Very funny, amazing comics from all over, from Arizona to Rhode Island. And so what we do is we go into churches and we put on an amazing show. There's usually 2 to 3 to 4 of us. Usually it's about 3 of us. And so how a church would get us to come to their churches, all they have to do is open the doors, host the Funny Together Tour, provide a few volunteers, provide someone to do the sound, have a stage and microphone, and here we are. We're there, and it's awesome. We do all the advertising, we sponsor ads, we bring not only the church to the show, but we also are sponsoring ads, selling tickets to the surrounding community. So our hopes is that the community comes into the church, people that have maybe been away from a church or have never stepped foot in a church before, and that they decide that they want to now come to their church. That's what we're hoping for. It's a great introduction to their church.
So we see that you have dates available in the Texas area, in the Dallas, Texas area.
Yeah.
May 16th. And May 18th, you're going to be in Florida. You're looking in the Tampa, Orlando area, and the dates available for that are September 20th, 21st, and 22nd. And folks, if you're interested or you know a church that's interested, you can contact Rhonda at info@funnytogether.com, and you guys can talk turkey. And hopefully you'll welcome Ron. She's very funny and she knows a lot of funny people, and you're gonna love the show. So I would highly advise you to contact her and have it for your church. I think churches need to laugh more anyway, Rhonda. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's really hard in this day and age to find clean quality entertainment. And so that's what I want to provide, for the believer and for the non-believer as well.
Rhonda, before we talk a little bit more about your comedy doings and goings about, because you've been doing a lot of late, tell us how you got started in stand-up and how long you've been doing it.
Okay. So actually, Maurice, believe it or not, I started doing stand-up in a church, which is very unlike how most comics get started. And from there, I ended up joining the Christian comedy Association, and met a lot of great people. I ended up trying out for the Clean Comedy Challenge. I did that in 2017, and in 2018, I actually won in Chicago. I started doing open mics. I did everything kind of backwards, if that's even possible, but I started doing a lot of open mics around here, and started getting on, shows around here, fundraisers, and things like that. I'm from Rhode Island, by the way. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, so I've done all kinds of things, corporate events and churches, and fundraisers, and just everything you can think of.
Well, and I think when people think of Rhode Island, you go, "Wow, is that a comedy area?" But no question, I mean, that's probably one of the best. I mean, you talk about Rhode Island and Boston. I guess you're fairly close to Boston and so forth, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of funny people up there, and
Yeah, it's
a lot of great comedians. Matter of fact, I'm sure you're familiar. There's so many of them, but I'll name one right off the top of my head: Bill Burr. Bill Burr is, I believe, from the area. There's so many talented comedians, though, in your neck of the woods, as it were.
definitely the Boston area. He was from Boston.
So I want to talk about your Drybar Comedy special. Like I said, you did it fairly recently. You did it up there in Provo, Utah,
Hmm.
where that is a fabulous opportunity for comedians to kind of get their comedy game going. Tell us about your experience there in Provo, Utah, and putting that special together.
So actually, I recorded that special in 2021. That was
Wow.
that was during the pandemic. So it was May. It's coming up on, what is that now? Is that 3 years? 3 years ago already.
Yes. Wow. I didn't
Mhm.
realize it was that far back,
Yeah.
Rhonda. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they were really backlogged. It was kind of crazy, during that time. And so it did not come out. Actually, it came out April 11th of last year. So it took 2 years for it to, get edited and produced and the whole 9 yards. And so it just came out last year. And so, yeah, but it was an amazing experience. It was a little different because, things were just opening back up. I didn't get to, have the amount of stage time that I would have liked to have had, you know. But I did whatever I could to get stage time. I flew all over the place. I had gigs in Michigan and in Arizona, and then, whatever I could get local, because there really wasn't a lot of local around here. So, but it was awesome. I mean, they treat you like gold. It's just run tight, like a ship. They know exactly what they're doing. And it was just, they treat you just so well. It was just so much fun. I got to record with Haas Ridgway. So
Yeah.
Haas's came out and mine around the same time, and along with Andrea Kaspari. So that it was just, she recorded the following night. It was so much fun. It really was. It was a great experience, and I hope to be able to do a second one. That's what I kind of have, as a goal.
Well, I think you should. I think that because I want to say when you did yours, was it during COVID?
It was during COVID, and
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
had gone from like 50 people to when I did it, it was 100. So they weren't allowing, it wasn't full capacity, full, like they are today. But they only allowed like 100 people. That was the limit. And but it was a lot of fun, and I was so fortunate to be able to do that.
Well, we're going to treat our audience to a little snippet of your routine. This is called the bucket list part of your routine. Rhonda Corey in Provo, Utah, doing her thing. doing her Drybar special?
I found out that it's really tough being 40, especially when you're 50. And now the trends have been changing, right? Because when I turn 30, I get a surprise party. And when I turn 40, I got a day at the spa. And when I turn 50, I got a colonoscopy. So when I turn 60, I'm just asking for gift cards. And now that I'm getting older, right, I'm like, I need to start crossing things off my bucket list. Not because I'm gonna do them. I just need to shorten it a little bit. And I don't know how this happened, but somehow I combined my bucket list with my to-do list. So now it reads, visit the Grand Canyon, write my memoir, buy milk, take skydiving lessons, off of my bucket list. Listen, when I meet Jesus, I don't want his first words to be, really, Rhonda? You forgot to buy milk.
We definitely don't want the Lord telling us that, Rhonda. But a very good special. It's called The Wizard of Walmart, ladies and gentlemen. And I highly advise you to go out and get purchase her Drybar Comedy special. It's very funny. You're listening to Bog Radio. This is the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. Good morning, everyone. We're talking with comedian Rhonda Corey. Rhonda, I want to ask you, as a comedian, are you comfortable performing in front of any demographic?
Okay, so I think that's kind of a tricky question. I'm comfortable, however, I'm not for every audience. You know,
yeah.
So let me give you an example. So if I was asked to perform for college kids or high school kids, they're not going to enjoy my my material because you know, it's going to be like, why is my mom on the stage? You know, I can't, you know, they're not going to be able to relate to me. So I'm comfortable, but you know, I'm not going to hit it with them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I find it interesting because I did a show at a high school gymnasium about 7 years ago. And the only reason I did it, there's a young lady that contacted my website. She was a student at this high school, and they were trying to raise funds for cancer research. I think a neighbor in the community had cancer, so they were trying to pay for this, for the medical expenses. And she invited me to be a part of that. At no cost. I went, wow, okay. High school. I've never done high school before. You know, oh my gosh. Okay. This is for a good cause. So I started to think about, okay, what am I going to write for a bunch of high school kids? So I started, thankfully my kids were around about that age at the time. So I started thinking about the things I enjoy doing with my teenagers and talking about with my teenagers. And I just related that to the kids at the high school's gymnasium, and I killed. It was amazing because I just got down on that level. Like, they love Marvel comics and superhero movies and video games and, you know, certain types of candy or what. So I just started talking, and so I just took on that challenge. But I think when you and you know what, it actually leads to another question that I wanted to ask, and I'll just go ahead and ask it now. What is, in your mind, the fine line between taking on a challenge to making you better and taking on a gig and or / challenge that's not for you? What's the fine line there?
I think it's important that you know where you're at. Do you know what I'm saying? You have to know what you are. I think it's important to stretch yourself, but also if someone is paying you to do a job, you need to bring it. You need to do that job, you know?
Yeah.
If someone's going to ask me to repair their roof, I'm not going to take that job, Maurice, because I don't know how to fix roofs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you need to be able to deliver. So if it's a thing that you just need to stretch yourself a little bit, that's one thing. But if you only have 20 minutes, do not tell someone you have 45 minutes.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I think that's the fine line. If you're going to stretch yourself a little bit, go for it. Just maybe to get out of your comfort zone, to bring you to the next level, that's fine. But if you cannot deliver, do not take that job. It's not fair to the client.
It's not fair to the client. And I think for comedians, I think that it's a fine line, because I do think there are times, opportunities that come about for a comic where it's like, you need to do this. You may or may not be ready for it, but you need to do it. You may be apprehensive. You might be afraid. It might be a demographic you don't want to perform in front of. There are a number of reasons why you might want to go ahead and do it to make you better. However, hey, Rhonda, there's also times where you need to go, I'm not ready for that. And you got to be honest with yourself. I took a gig in Baltimore just before COVID, and it was a 45-minute set. I'd never done 45 minutes before. And I just said, I'm going to do it. And I challenged myself. I wrote more. And I tell you, you know what? Let me tell you something too. I don't know what your method of preparation is, but for me, I like do it in 10-minute, 15-minute spots. And I'm writing and writing and writing. And then when I go out and do it, I'm ready to go. But let me tell you something. Writing for 35 to 50 minutes, whoa. It was monumental. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much that I got to get ready. And I had already agreed to do the gig. So I'm getting ready and I'm realizing, whoa, you would think that it wouldn't be that big of a deal to write a little extra, but it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to remember this stuff. And I was like, oh, wow. So I didn't anticipate that. And so I had my wife put all my jokes, she's on a cue card, to sit right there in the front and follow me joke. So I'll just look at, bam. Got to the gig, didn't even need to look at it. I forgot she was even there. I was so in to my set that I didn't even remember that I needed her for a reference.
That's good. That's good.
She's flipping anyway. She told me she was flipping. It was funny. But the reality is I was ready to go, Rhonda. I was ready to go. So I guess I said all that to say this. I watched a comedian talk about the game of comedy, as he put it. He said, you can't cheat comedy. He said, there's methods and there's a process to this thing. You've got to do your writing. You got to do the thing you don't want to do. You got to write, and you got to write and write. And then you got to do open mics, stage time. You've got to get out there. You got to fail. You got to be willing to be humiliated. You got to be willing to bomb. You've got to go through hecklers. You've got to experience this stuff. You got to bite. You got to lean into it, is what he was saying. So to get back to my initial question, he was saying, you don't take a job, you don't leapfrog over the process and do something you're not ready for. You can't cheat comedy.
Right.
And you go up there and bomb, and now nobody even wants to talk to you for the next 2 years.
Right. Your reputation,
exactly,
is ruined. You don't want to do that. Yes, are you going to have times where you don't do so well and you bomb? Yes. But if you're those are the times that you do the open mics, or you do the shows that you do guest spots on or whatever. And then, that's when you work out your material.
That's when you work out.
You don't work out your material on a paid show.
No,
it doesn't.
That's not
can you
the time
imagine
to
if a
do
doctor did that? Can you imagine if a surgeon did that? You know what I'm saying?
Hey, buddy, not on my pancreas. All right, pal.
Exactly.
Yes, you're exactly, Rhonda. You're exactly right. But I like asking that question. I've mentioned this before. I had a friend that went out to Las Vegas and did a headlining spot. He wasn't nearly ready for it, and he fell flat on his face. And I get, and his attitude was, I need to challenge myself. That was not a reasonable challenge.
No,
it wasn't reasonable. You didn't understand where you did not evaluate where you were not honest in evaluating where you are.
Right.
And that's very important. I think you are familiar with Donnie Stopa. I want to say Donnie, as a matter of fact, has been on Breaking Down the Four Walls, of a comedian's Bible study that I do. And I want to say you guys were up there at the same time on one or two occasions. Not only that, I'm sure you've run into it's almost impossible to be a Christian comedian and not know who Donnie is. But that being said, Donnie's done a documentary called Comedy versus the Cancel Culture. And he's in contract discussions right now, trying to get it on a platform. But I'm going to play the trailer, and I want you to take a look at it. It's about the challenges of stand-up comedy in 2024. I'm going to play it, and then I'll come back, and I'd love to get your reaction to it.
Sure.
Cancel culture. Talking about censorship in comedy. Do you think that cancel culture exists in comedy?
Basically, in a nutshell.
Definitely feel like, as bizarre as it sounds, like there's a war on jokes right now.
Cancel culture, it's such a misdirected umbrella term. You can't police what is subjective.
Oh, wow! Like, you kind of have to live your life bulletproof now. You just have to.
Greatest night in the history of television.
You can't say an inappropriate joke that doesn't have the right context.
There's always going to be some sliver of cancel culture, of woke, of political correctness.
You're not funny, and this is how you have to do the joke, because I know how funny jokes work. That's not the joke.
I don't believe people get canceled. I believe that they have a shift in their audience.
Put your hands together for Mr. Joe Rogan!
When people say somebody is canceled, I think it just means, oh, we found they did or said something that most people don't like.
I date a lot of bimbos. That's the problem. Man.
So what?
So let's think about that joke in today's culture.
Let's do that. Let's think about that joke in today's culture, Rhonda. Why don't we? Your opinion of the state or the public perception in 2024 of stand-up comedy.
Mm-hmm. I think, it's so different than the comedy that I grew up with. Anything went, you know what I mean? It was like anything goes.
Yes.
And now it's like everyone's offended about everything. So, now, because of my brand of comedy, I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about sex or, a lot of the hot topics that could be considered offensive. So
yes,
I mean, I'm basically my comedy branded. I'm talking about my own life, which can be offensive.
Okay.
Which can be offensive to my husband, and no, So for me, it's a little different. Do you know what I'm saying? When I go on stage, I don't see how I can get canceled. I don't talk about religion, even though I do, comedy in churches. I don't talk about religion.
Yeah.
Those aren't my jokes. That's not what my jokes are based on. My
Yes.
jokes based on my perception of my life. And
Yes.
so how I view things, how I see things, what I think's going on. So, but I think people are a lot more uptight now, and there are things that are just, off the table that weren't off the table when I was growing up. You look at the Dean Martin roast, and I gasp. I'm like, like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe some of the stuff that they got away with saying, but they were really like, there was nobody there that was like offended by it. They just made fun of, if you made fun of someone, they made fun of you right back. Do you know what I'm
Yes.
saying? That's how it
Yes.
was.
Yes. I think the sensitivity at a lot of shows, and we go back to as we witnessed during the documentary trailer where Will Smith went onto the Oscar stage and slapped Chris Rock. And it kind of opened up the idea of what was really going on. I mean, people are really sensitive. I mean, that was, of course, extreme. But I think people get upset at these comedy shows. And when you think about what happened with Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Steve Martin, and, there were so many guys back, Red Fox. And Red Fox did it. And then Archie Bunker, even though Carol O'Connor was not a comedian, it was a funny show. And they said a lot of things that most people couldn't begin to handle now. But if you think about some of those things that we allowed and accepted as comedic versus now, it's unbelievable. So I think the sensitivity is a reflection of our culture. And I think, and people are going to say, Maurice, you're doing that get off my lawn thing. Maybe, but I think, you and I come from an era, Rhonda, where your parents said just put some dirt on it, you'll be fine.
Yeah, suck it up. Like
I mean,
that's what I always say to my son, because we do come from that era of like, suck it up.
Suck it up.
Yeah, just suck it up and work. Like if you were sick, you went to work, like because you had to go to work. Like you just did it. And today it's a completely different thought. And I'm not saying that it's completely wrong either. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that at all. Because we were a little unsensitive. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We were definitely, we were a little too much on some things. Let's be real.
Well, we were. I think it's a combination of two.
Yeah.
And I'm just surmising this whole idea of the cancel culture world that we live in, and that Donnie Stopa, I think, accurately depicted in his documentary, or was trying to fish out why this cancel culture thing exists. Because I think it's a combination of both things. Audiences are softer, and the people delivering the jokes are softer, meaning they don't know how to present what they're talking about. And I like what you said. Some of the things that were done back in the day, it was really extreme. It might have been a lot of levels too extreme, but people had total control of administering that comedy. You know what I mean? It's like they knew how to present it. And if it made you upset, you just simply did watch it. You didn't protest or anything, and moved on. That guy's not for me. I don't like him, and I'm never gonna watch what he does. And it was just that was the end of it. But now we're in a protest stage. People are just so highly offended that they have to come out and attack you because you're talking about the subject matter.
you said something and it's like you just don't watch it. I mean, you know what? When I don't like something, I turn the channel.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's turn the channel. Like, you don't have to watch it.
You don't have.
You don't have to listen to someone. You don't don't support them. If you don't believe in something, then don't support it.
Don't support it.
And
here's another.
Don't throw your dollars at it.
Well, see, Rhonda, and that's the other part of this equation I don't understand. I mean, for example, you'll take a guy like Dave Chappelle, right? Now, for whatever reason, you paid good money to go see Dave Chappelle, and somehow you got offended. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. You've seen this guy before, obviously. Right. That's why you bought the ticket. But then you get there, you get mad. So it just kind of does. It's a very confusing time that we're living in as far as what we do as comedians and how we offend people and how they, I mean, heck, Rhonda, you can be a clean comic, you can be a Christian comic, and chances are in 2024, you're going to make somebody upset.
I'm going to offend somebody. Yeah.
You're going to offend somebody, and so it's become this huge affront and travesty now because so-and-so said that. And I'm going, oh my God. So I think, we're dealing in much more challenging waters in 2024 as stand-up comedians. And we got to figure out how to navigate through it. I think it just makes our job more difficult because you're wondering, well, can I say that tonight? Or is this audience going to be okay with that joke? Because the last 5 audiences were really good with it, but I'm getting a bad vibe about this one. You have to kind of really be careful when you go out there.
I think you just brought up a really good point. And I think this is, for anyone, is to know your audience.
Yeah.
Know what kind of an audience are you performing for? That makes a huge difference. So when you said, are you okay with any demographic? Are you comfortable? It's more like, am I for that demographic? Is this, is my audience gonna be accepting of me? Am I their kind of comedy? I think that's really important. And I don't think all these comics take that into consideration sometimes. They,
Right, yeah. Well, I totally agree. And then with that being said, that brings about another question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference in your mind between Christian comedy and clean comedy?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. And there's there's no cut and dry to what is clean comedy, because in everyone's mind, it is something different. So if I was to ask 10 different comics define clean comedy, I would probably get 10 different answers. Yeah. Now church comedy is pretty specific. It's not just taking out the innuendos or just it's having no innuendos. It's not, it's not dressing them up in a different outfit.
Right.
It's not about exchanging a word for a crude word. It's not an exchange.
No.
It is the material. It is the material and what you're talking about. And so churches, and you have to find out. I mean, every church is different too. Like some churches, they don't want any kind of even potty humor. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Not that I don't like potty humor, so just putting it out there. But you know, I don't. I hate it. I hate it. I think it's cheap. But anyway, they don't want that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So you have to be or be careful talking about all right, so I'll give you like a little brief. I have a comedian that I work with who has a hysterical joke about the first time, you know, they were with his wife. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, and it's not, there's no description or anything like that. I don't want to tell you the joke because it's his joke, but it's hysterical. It really is. It's a really funny joke, but someone was worried about that joke being too sensitive for their audience. And
Right.
I'm like, he's married. Like,
yes.
He's married.
Yes.
And sex in a marriage is fine. And it doesn't get into explaining it. It's, you know, anyway. I mean, I know that just kind of like grazed it, but I'm just saying you never know.
You never know. I had Jeff Allen on the show a few weeks ago, and he was talking about, you know, kind of the same thing. People were kind of criticizing him for making jokes about his wife, or certain jokes about he and his wife. And the point was, my wife's okay with this. You should be as well, right? But you know, it's a fine line, because I think some churches get burned because they don't do their research, and they'll get somebody in there because they said they were clean, and then they're aghast once they're performing at the sanctuary. They're like, oh, Lord, help me. So that kind of thing exists. And I was actually just learning about it myself. I mean, about 10 years ago, I used to do a clean open mic in Washington, D.C. So my machination was to get the dirty comedians that I knew to come and do clean comedy.
Yeah.
And 95% of the time they got it right. I had a couple of instances where it kind of went left. And one guy got up there. He had a accent. He was an Eastern European who, you know, had a really hard accent. Anyway, long story short, it was about 45 seconds into the set. My wife got about this far away from my nose and said, "Get him off the stage right now." I said, "Yes, ma'am." I went up. The guy didn't use a single curse word. I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, so-and-so, let's hear for so-and-so, and you know, get out of here." And I went to him later and I said, what were you thinking? And he says in his Eastern European accent, "Yeah, but I don't cuss."
Right.
I said, "Dude, you can't talk about that though, man. It's inappropriate, you know." So long story short, what I'm saying, there are some people that think because they didn't use a curse word or an inappropriate word that they did something wrong. They don't think they've done anything wrong. They think they're clean.
I trust me, I know. So I did a clean open mic here with a friend of mine. And I don't know, probably about 9 months we ran it.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge. Because there weren't a lot of clean comics. So, I mean, we had a list of what was appropriate and what was not. And it was really difficult for a lot of the comedians that were, you know, it was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And so, I hear what you're saying about churches getting burned because, and it really burns it for the rest of us, right? Because
it sure does.
They do have to do their research. And just like, you know, that's why, like, when they're bringing the Funny Together tour, it's trusted. I'm hand selecting the comedians to be on my tour, because it's the reputation of the tour that could get ruined, right? And so it's hard. It is hard to trust someone, because when you're, you know, here's the thing, when you're standing on that church stage, you are representing them.
That's right. That's right.
So just like it's kind of like being a mom or a dad of a parent. I mean, being a parent of a child. That child represents you.
Yeah, yeah. I had gotten into this thing of trying to transform dirty comics, and my wife said, "Honey, I love your heart, but you got to stop."
Yeah.
We did a
Yeah.
I did a show and for church, and I had invited one of those guys, and the church called me and said, "Maurice, you got to be kidding. No, we don't want him." And so of course I replaced him with a Christian comedian that I knew, and we went on with it. So there are churches that do their research. The long and the short of this segment of our convo is there's a clear difference between Christian and clean.
Oh, yes.
There's a clear difference, and sometimes that gets confused. And it's amazing to me, Rhonda, how confusing it literally is in the community of comedy. You know what I mean? It's like you got to be careful about who you invite on your tour and who you invite, in your space, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I'll end this segment with this. But now there's some bright stories that can come out of it as well.
Sure.
I had invited, Kason Wilson is a Christian comic, but I had invited Martin Amini, who is a secular comedian, to do some clean shows that I had produced. He did wonderful. He was, and I saw the goodness in him. You know what I mean? He does his thing. But he was wonderful, and he went on and continued with his normal stuff, and he's popping off really big now. But I just wanted him to know, hey, dude, you can do this, and it was beautiful. And I pray to the Lord that sometime down the road, that he'll come back and want to do more with me, because he's just a wonderful comic. And again, as I mentioned, Kason Wilson, who's a writer for the new Jon Stewart show. And I did comedy with him for years, and he's out in Los Angeles right now. And so there's some good stories, involved with that. You take a chance on people, but Rhonda, you just have to be careful, and more than anything, prayerful.
Yes.
So it's just an interesting topic. I just kind of wanted to pick your brain on that one for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio. We're talking with comedian Rhonda Corey. Rhonda, you mentioned open mics earlier in this conversation. Do you still do them?
Do I physically go to them? Is that what you're saying?
And perform at open mics? Yeah.
If I am not, if I don't have any, gigs that I have going on, and I need to, stay fresh and be on stage, yes. But a lot of times, if I do have shows and I do have like a new joke or something that I want to work out, I'll make sure it's pretty much ready.
Yeah.
And then I'll try it in between, material that I already know that's working. You know what I'm saying? I'll try to sandwich it in between, or put it next to a joke that is in that same category, something like that.
Yeah.
And but I do like to work it out ahead of time.
I've gotten to the point now, Ron, and since I've done this podcast, since COVID shut everything down, it's kind of been hard for me to get back into it. I've been doing some stuff here and there, but one thing I really value open mics. But it's gotten to the point now where everybody's a comedian around it. I go to open mic, there are like 50 people.
Yeah.
Trying to get, and it's like, I'm too old to wait all night for. I'm gone. And I find that, and I'm in Austin, Texas now. And when I was in DC, when I started to creep back out, it was just the same thing. It's just, there are so many comedians out there now, Rhonda. I don't know if it was COVID that birthed these new people out of just total depression or whatever, but There are just so many comics out there. I don't really fool with them that much anymore for that reason.
Yeah.
And I've adopted the George Carlin method where, and I, not to say I won't ever do another open mic, because I will, but George Carlin, when he did all those HBO specials, George Carlin would sit down and he would write out his entire set to his own satisfaction and go, I think it's ready for process. It's ready to be put out there and go out there and kill. And that's kind of where I'm just like writing what I think is funny. And I'm putting an hour special together right now. And I'm writing what I think is funny.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been on stage enough where I know what to do. You know what I mean? It's like open mics are valuable, but they're not any longer absolutely necessary. You know,
an open mic is just so that you can hear the words over the microphone.
Exactly.
So you can hear so you can say the words, so you can hear the words. And the other thing is so you can feel uncomfortable. I don't know how else to say it, because I mean, open mic is definitely not a comfortable. You know that you're not going to get laughs. I mean, it's all comics sitting in the, they're all focused themselves. So and plus I don't trust. Do you trust like, you know what I'm saying? Unless it's your good friends or whatever. They'll tell you if something's good or not. But I don't know. That's why I would rather sandwich it in between, work on it on stage at a show with a real live audience. And if it doesn't work, I already have tried and true material coming right after it. That's going to be okay. So to me, that's the best thing you can do. Or, grab a guest spot on somebody's show. You're not going to ruin a show for 5 minutes or 7 minutes.
No, it's a good point.
What I mean?
I like
that. And you can, like I said, you can sandwich it. But yeah, so, and that's how I'm handling it now. But if I have a bunch of material and I want to get it out, and I will go to open mic. I haven't been to one in a while.
Yeah.
I've been kind of, doing it this way, but because that's another thing that, I don't enjoy going to a lot of the open mics because it's so filthy.
It is. It's really
basically like you handed a microphone to a bunch of middle schoolers. It's like it's kind of like
what you're doing.
It's like it's just write a joke. They're not writing jokes. They're just talking about disgusting things.
Well, and Rhonda, that's why I'm not going to stay there all night, and I'm not going to watch a bunch of filthy 20 filthy middle school comedians go up there so I can get 5 minutes. I can't do it anymore. There was a time when I could do that, and there weren't as many comedians, like I said, out like they are now, where, okay, I can suffer this. But and then you also had, witnessing opportunities as well, because those kids, Rhonda, let me tell you something, and I don't want to digress too much. Wow. I'm looking at those kids. I'm like, I feel so sorry for them. This is where their headspace is, and they have no idea, what they're doing and all that type of stuff. So those are great witnessing opportunities, and I had a chance to talk to several of them and counsel them. And, even though they didn't change, they were like, okay, they respected me. They said, okay, well, we know Maurice is going to be clean. He might even say Jesus. And they, they listen. And I know that God worked through that.
Right.
But as far as myself and getting better doing what I want to do, I just can't suffer anymore. Like, I'll go back out a time or two, but it's no longer something I'm going to lean on just because of that. And I think we're at the point in our comedy game where, we've done it enough to know whether or not something may or may not work. But I do like your point. You do need to get uncomfortable sometimes. Mm-hmm. And just go get uncomfortable today.
Yeah.
And just to make sure that, you know, okay, shake yourself up, wake up, man. So,
Right.
So I think it's good. I like that.
Mhm.
Rhonda, this has been a great convo. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you, and maybe I can get one or two questions in here before we get out. But one is, what is it about comedy over the years that you've been involved where something has happened, you saw something, you had a conversation with someone, you watched something on stage for another comic, or it happened to you, or yada, yada, all these different things. What's happened that's made you better at this comedy game? What is the biggest thing you've learned from being involved with comedy that's made you better at it?
I say this to everyone. I think the biggest thing is that you need to do it afraid.
Oh, wow.
When I started, I had severe stage fright. Severe.
Okay.
And I wanted it I wanted to be a comedian more so than my fear of that. My want was bigger than my fear, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
My desire. Absolutely. And so I would do it scared to death.
Yeah.
But I would do it.
Yeah. I love it.
And so I think that goes with anything. If there's something that you want and you just need to do it anyway, even if you're afraid, because that is how you enlarge your comfort zone.
Okay.
That's the only way.
Yeah.
To do it is to keep doing it.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. You know, I liken stand-up comedy. I used to tell my wife this all the time, to being Evel Knievel before jumping over 20 cars. Before I went on stage, that was the adrenaline rush I got. And it was driven by nerves. I mean, you're so jacked up, you know, and nervous, as you will, if you will, that, that's the effect. But once you grab that microphone, I know for me.
Yes.
I mean, it is on. I mean, you are like on, and whatever you were feeling prior to that, it doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
You're feeling it. Of course, you take the feeling, but you're so into what you're doing. And I like what you said a moment or two ago too. Eventually, and I think you said this, eventually you get to the point where, you override that.
Yes.
You're defeating the fear. You're putting it down under your feet, and you're winning over that negative emotion.
Yes.
And you have to keep fighting it until you just win every time.
Absolutely. And I think, today it's a different feeling. I still get a little, the butterflies, and I still get the anxious, like I have to move a little bit. I can't just sit before I go up. I pace a little bit, like a little lion, pacing back and forth.
Yeah.
That's just me. That's how I deal with it. And I just kind of go over what I'm going to say. But it's like, I get to, the whole, like, I get to tell my jokes. Like here's something that someone said to me. A gem, a true gem, actually. Ross Bennett. I was feeling the nerves, and we were at an open mic, actually, at the CCA.
Okay.
So this was earlier on, and I love Ross Bennett. I think he's just an amazing comedian. He's been doing it 30 plus years, and he's so talented. And so he said to me, when you go on stage, you act as though you're a jeweler. And with your jokes are your jewels, right?
Yes.
So you said, okay, you take, like you're presenting. Okay, here's this joke. There you go. Do you like it? Okay. Some might like it. Okay. Don't worry. I have another one. you know,
Uh-huh.
and then you just keep presenting. Look at this fine one right here. It sparkles and shines. And so it's like I feel like that, like, oh, I get so excited to tell my jokes to you. You know what I mean? Like, you have to listen to me. I have the microphone and I get to tell you my jokes, and, and hopefully it's going to trigger, laughter from you, and you're going to leave refreshed. And, and so I thought that was great. A great way to look at it is look what you're presenting to them. Your jokes are your jewels. And so that was a great a piece of advice that was given to me that I always share.
Well, that is great advice, and I love it. There's so many things during this journey of comedy that we experience that make us better. And there's so many things that we could, if we look back on what happened here, there, and so forth, and it's like, oh man, thank goodness that happened. I didn't like it at the time, but it made me better. And you kind of override that, getting back to what you said about overcoming your fears. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking with comedian Rhonda Corey on the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having a cup of coffee and hanging out with us on Bog Radio and RadioQDX.com and KCHF TV. Rhonda, it's good to see you, and much success to you on the Funny Together comedy tour. Wish you the best, and give me a shout out if you need a comedian. I'm in Austin, and when you hit the Dallas show, give me a shout out. If you need somebody, I'm here. Rhonda.
Okay.
But thanks again for being on the show. God bless you, and may the peace of Christ be with you and your family. God bless you.
Thanks, Maurice. What a great joy it was to just hang out with you again for a little while.
Amen. Amen. God bless.